Hello, it's Romaya Hildid. Welcome back. Anyways, so today I have a story for you guys, yeah? Coming to you from a closet, a Victoria's closet. Anyways, so this story, yeah? I'm gonna be Shahrazad, yeah? The woman with 101 stories, right? Before these motherfuckers kill us. So, this story is gonna be about Helen of Troy, right? We know the story. If you don't know the story, I'll quickly give you a summary. But I know that exact story, right? The story of Helen of Troy. I know that story, but I'm gonna explain to you where I've read that story and why it's very similar to the Helen of Troy story, right? And the one I'm talking about, the one I know, takes place in what we call Ethiopia today, but it was the Abyssinian kingdom, the Abyssinian kingdom in East Africa, in what is Ethiopia now, Eritrea, that sort of area, Somalia, right? So before I get into that story, yeah, we'll start with the summary of Helen of Troy. For those who don't know, if you haven't heard the story, and then I'll tell you the one I know, and then you can connect the dots basically. Bye. Helen of Troy was a figure from Greek mythology, famously known as the most beautiful woman in the world. The story of Helen is primarily told in works such as Homer's Iliad and various other ancient Greek texts. Yeah, remember that. According to legend, Helen was the daughter of Zeus and Leda, and her beauty was so exceptional that it led to the Trojan War. The Trojan War took place around the 12th or 13th century BC, as per tradition datings. It was a legendary conflict between the Greeks and the Trojans over the abduction of Helen by Paris, a prince of Troy. So now that we got the summary out of the way, and you guys are familiar with the story of Helen if you didn't know before, let's get into the meaning or the etymology of the name Helen, because that's going to tie in with the rest of the story that I'm trying to tell. And hopefully at the end you'll understand where I was trying to go with it, right? So, Helen's name is of Greek origin and is often interpreted to mean shining light or bright one. Her story remains a prominent and enduring myth that has been a subject of various literary and artistic works throughout history. So the etymology of the meaning I just gave, right? That's the consensus for now, right? But according to Wikipedia, right, the etymology of Helen's name continues to be a problem for scholars. In the 19th century, a guy named George Curtius related Helen to mean the moon, like Selena, right? In the early 20th century, this scholar named Emily Bozak considered her name to mean torch. You guys will find out the actual meaning of Helen in the Kushite Somali version, right? So stay tuned. So now that we know the basics of the Helen story, let's bring it back to the Horn or Eastern Africa. In Ethiopia, she's known as Helene of Ethiopia, but in Somalia, we know her as Helene, Queen of Sela. Now, she gets kidnapped by a guy named Zara Yaqub. Who is Zara Yaqub? Zara Yaqub was an emperor of Ethiopia. He was a member of the Solomonic dynasty, yeah, between 1399 to 1468. So he basically ruled ruled between the 14th century and the 15th century. His regional name was in Ge'ez Questo Tonus, but in the Latin version or the English version, you guys would know him as Constantine the First. He's the one who's known for creating the Ge'ez literature. That's what that's the literature that the Orthodox Church of Ethiopia uses. His name Yaqub like cracks me up sometimes, makes me giggle, because I always think of it when I hear that name. The Nation of Islam, and how they have this myth that Yaqub created white people. But in Somali, we have a different version of that story. Anyways. Okay, so Sarah Yaqub, or Constantine the First, yeah, of Ethiopia, levied taxes on the adult or members of the adult sultanate, which is a Muslim sultanate. That's where the Somalis come in. So he basically asked for a tribute or taxes to be paid to him. And the Grad of Sela, the Sultan of Sela, Mehmet, her father, Helena's father, refused to pay it. What ended up happening is Sela gets invaded by Zara Yaqub and his army, and they kidnap his daughter, Helena. And that kicked off the war between the Muslims and the Christians, the Orthodox Christians of Ethiopia. So it all started with a woman, just like Helen. Yeah, so just like Helen of Troy, she wasn't only kidnapped for her beauty, but in the Kushite Horn Eastern African context, she was a smart woman, so he took her and made her his queen, which was a normal occurrences at the time with chieftains or leaders or sultanate or sultans. Yeah, they would steal or kidnap beautiful, intelligent women and marry them and have them contribute to their court. So basically her kidnapping, yeah, is what contributed to the animosity or the conflict between the Muslims and the Christians in the Horn of Africa. She was a Muslim, yeah, in the version of the story we know, right, in the Somali context. And then later became, yeah, so, and then that became the Muslim-Christian conflict, and her father sought alliances with the rest of the other Muslim clansmen or tribesmen, whether they were Somali, Sodomas, Hadia. Hadia means gift. So all the other Kushites then united. And that's where the conflict started, right? So in our version, yeah, which is historically correct as well, that's the face or the mind, the face and the mind, yeah, that launched 1,000 ship, or was it 1,001 stories, 101 stories? Anyways, now that you know a little bit about the details, yeah, let me just give you a quick overview of the meaning and etymology of her name in the Kushite Somali context. So her name in Somali Kushite context, yeah, specifically the Somali, her name, Helen, or Helen, yeah, in Somali means qof Helen. meaning a person that is ready, yeah, that can do. So basically a warrior. But you can use, that's when you use the H, but you can also use the X as Helene, meaning the person with the solution, the one that can do. Yeah. So her name has a duality meaning as well. Yeah. A warrior, which is also fire, torch, light, but then also solution. Yeah. Because fire both destroys and purifies things as well. So now that we have the Helen or the Helen or Helena stories out of the way, and you know how the story starts and finishes, but there's also, extra details in other parts of the poetry where some people actually have said he actually came and asked for her hand, but they refused to give it to her, and then he ends up kidnapping her, right? Because no society is going to give up their most beautiful, intelligent woman away. So, that story is going to lead us to another version of her, which would become the Jewish story, right? Because as we know, we're all told Judaism came before Christianity and Islam. But if you look at different texts, you'll see it's probably an after story, right? So let's get to this woman named Judith. So before we get into the details of Judith, the Judah of the story, right? Before we get into her story, let me just quickly give you a backstory of what kind of like prompted me to add this little bit of the story to this story as well. So last summer, right, I was on the bus on my way from work, and I was sitting next to this boy, right? And he kept looking at me, and then eventually he just turns around and he was like, "Excuse me, are you from Ethiopia or Eritrea?" And I look at him and I'm like, "Close, I'm from Somalia, but I know about Ethiopia and Eritrea." And so then he started telling me this whole story, right? About, and I asked him, I said, "Oh, have you been there?" And he says, "Well, not Ethiopia, but my mom is from Eritrea." And he was like, "We went to go visit my auntie, her name is Judith." And he just kept talking about Judith, right? And so we had our little conversation. We were just going about, how he ended up there and how he felt, and he can't wait to go back. Yeah, so he was like, "Oh, I can't wait to go back." And he was excited about it, right? So this boy is like, I don't know, 10, 12, maybe 11, like 10, 11, 12 years old, right? And initially, when I sat next to him, I just thought he was a white boy, right? And I was like, "Oh, it's a white kid." But then he kept staring at me. So I'm like, "Oh, why is he staring at me?" And then he asked the question, obviously, "Are you from Ethiopia or Eritrea?" Right? Because whenever I go to Ethiopia or Eritrea, I swear, even the Somalis accuse me of being Eritrean Ethiopian. I don't know what it is. It's the eyes. And I always say, is it because of the eyes? I could see you all. So, anyways, that was my little backstory. And that boy, I swear, he said he comes on this bus after school. I have never seen him after that day, right? I always look for him. I'm like, "Oh, where did he go?" Because he said he was like a couple of stops from me, but I haven't seen him. So I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." You know what I mean? Because sometimes there's certain situations that have you question certain things, right? And like I said, he looked like straight up white boy, or white little kid. So his dad was English. I think his mom was Eritrean. So let's get into the Judith story. So Judith, right? Judith is the Tigrinya and Amharic name but she's also known as Isatu in Amharic and Gawa. She's been accused of laying waste or destroying the kingdom of Aksum, all the churches and the monument, because they sold her into slavery and cut off her breast. So she went on a revenge rampage. Yeah? So let's get into her story. Judith, also known as Judith or Gudet, was a legendary queen in Ethiopian history who is said to have reigned in the 10th century. According to Ethiopian tradition and folklore, Queen Judith led a successful military campaign against the ruling Aksumite dynasty, resulting in its downfall. Judith also Queen Judith is described as a powerful, ruthless ruler who played a significant role in shaping the political landscape of Ethiopia. During her reign, she is often portrayed as a symbol of resistance and change in Ethiopian history, and her story has become an integral part of the country's folklore and oral tradition. The same thing as Helene, Helen, Helen of Troy. Let's get into the meaning of her name. So we all know the propaganda against any woman that has led in the historical context or in the contemporary, they're always demonized, right? So Judith, Judah, yeah, it kind of goes along with the whole story why Jews are demonized, right? Blame the woman that gave birth to a group of people, right? So Judith, right, in the Gaius narrative, yeah, is associated positively with the biblical Judith, right? But so like the other women, right, or the other versions of her story as a politically leading woman, right, in the Amharic, right, good connotes a range of different meanings, yeah? It can mean freak, a monster, strange, a weird person, or wonderful, right? But her alternative name, right, Isatu, means fire. Yeah, so fire, light, torch, the torch bearer, yeah? So Judith is believed to mean beautiful or honored. The name often carries connotations of strength, power, and royalty, reflecting the characteristics attributed to Queen Judith in Ethiopian history and folklore. Makes you wonder about a woman's scorn, right? So now that we have all of this out of the way, these stories, let's move on to the newest version of her. So now that we have that out of the way, right? And let's talk about the new version of this story. Because throughout history, right, there has been many women in many different places. But the story always started in one place, and that has been taken and translated and reworked all the way around the world. So Mulan, let's get to Mulan's story. So in Chinese culture, dragons are often seen as powerful and auspicious symbols that represent strength, courage, protection. In the story of Mulan, her association with dragons is rooted in the idea that dragons are guardians and protectors. In some interpretations of the Mulan legend, she's depicted as having a special connection to dragons, with dragons serving her as spiritual allies or protectors throughout her journey. Dragons are also traditionally considered to be wise and noble creatures, qualities that align with Mulan's character and her actions in the story. The association of Mulan with dragons further emphasizes her bravery, resilience, and extraordinary abilities, highlighting her as a legendary hero in Chinese folklore. So, Mulan is a legendary figure from Chinese folklore who is believed to have lived during the Northern Wei dynasty, which ruled China from 386 to 534 AD. The story of Mulan tells of a young woman who disguises herself as a man to take her father's place in the army and goes on to exhibit extraordinary courage and skill in battle. Her story has been celebrated for centuries as a symbol of loyalty, bravery, and female empowerment. So then in after the whole fire and dragon thing, right? The name Mulan in Chinese can be translated to mean magnolia, a type of flower that's often associated with beauty, perseverance, and nobility. The name reflects the character of Mulan and the qualities she embodies in their folklore. Yeah. So, Magnolia. Y'all remember that movie? What was it called? Um, I forgot the name of that movie with the magnolia, Southern Magnolia, was it? Oh, anyways, I've been seeing a lot of magnolia trees lately. They're so beautiful. They're purple, pinkish. Love them. They're all over London these days. Um, anyways, there's multiple realities and stories being told. Yeah. You just can't get lost in the sauce. Stick to your culture, stick to where you come from, and you would see all of these stories have a common ground and a common beginning. Anyways, today's Eid Mubarak. Yeah, Eid Mubarak means happy soil return day, happy earth day. Bye.